Christine,
Hey, Erin.
I'm almost home. I'm going to switch to my computer.
Okay.
So if I get my dog to go home. Because I can better manage the meeting from my computer.
Okay, cool. Yep. And Austin's joining, so he's gonna host.
Yeah.
That. Yeah. That will be Zoom logistics. So.
Oh, we have somebody new too. I'll admit them and let them know.
Okay.
Or actually, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll see if I can make the transition without closing the meeting.
Okay, sounds good.
Come on.
Here we go to Erin's.
Yes, let me. How do I end this? Yeah, let me.
Nice.
Got the uniform on.
Yeah, dressed and ready for the occasion.
Good afternoon, everyone. We're not ready to start, but I'm impressed. There's more new people than I've ever seen before.
New year.
Be with you.
Oh, it's good. Yeah, Austin's going to be our host today, and so we'll give him a few minutes to hop on.
Oh, there he is.
Hey, Austin.
Hey, you got my message?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm just gonna get the agenda up. So while we're waiting like 3 minutes for people to join, does anybody have experiences they want to share walking and biking in the snow lately? And just general thoughts, like good experiences, bad experiences. I'll start by saying that it's been absolutely beautiful, just walking around and seeing the snow and everything. And one thing that I think cities can improve on snow plowing, at least, is like the very corner ramp, the pedestrian ramp. Sometimes plows will just push the snow right to the edge of that ramp and it'll stay there. And residents are tasked with clearing off the sidewalk, but sometimes people living on the corner lots forget to clear the ramps off and the plows push it there. So if I'm using a stroller, it's like it makes it difficult. Anyways, that's a thought I've had recently. What have you guys experienced?
Yeah, kind of similar with bike lanes, right? Like plows often push the snow off the car lanes, but sometimes half the bike lane is kind of the edge of that. So had a few really good cleared bike lanes and some that I had to adjust my my position in a bit.
Or they create big piles in the mobility lanes. That's what I'm calling them now.
Yes, mobility lane.
And in part because I saw a woman in a what do they call power
Chair, like
power
a motorized wheelchair.
Yeah, motorized wheelchair. In the what neighborhood would have that been? Anyway, South Franklin, using the mobility lane because the sidewalks are narrow or not cleared, or they have gaps in them. And I thought, wow, if I complain about the bike lanes or the mobility lanes not being cleared, but for somebody like that, it's a really serious problem. So, but it's a wonderful winter is a wonderful time to ride a bike, even if it's a little bit cold. When it gets in the single digits and teens, it's a little bit chilly, but most of the time, the 20s and 30s is a great kind of temperature to ride around.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's start the meeting, you guys. There are a lot of new people that I haven't met here, and someday, if it's more convenient, if it's convenient, someday we'll meet in person. I think right now we really like Zoom because everyone can meet from a whole bunch of places and it makes it convenient. So not all have to gather together. And then of course, case numbers rising, it's probably the wise thing to do. But let's go around. I'll call you out based on where you are on the Zoom screen. We've got a big crowd today, so let's be quick. Just say your name. If you have a volunteer role with BikeWalk Provo, state that so everybody knows what you do for the organization. So, Christine.
Oh, yep. I'm Christine Branson. I'm the Director of Communications for BikeWalk Provo.
Thanks.
And happy you guys got our email today or whatever brought you here. Thank you for joining.
Yeah, because there's a lot of new people, so it's good. Okay, so I'm Austin Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of BikeWalk Provo. Okay, and then the next, is it Feet Day? How do you say your name?
My name is Pekadei. So
Okay.
I'm using my phone and my laptop. So I have two screens because the microphone and the webcam in my laptop, it freezes by the antivirus. So if I use just the laptop, you won't see me. So sometimes I look at my phone, so sometimes I look at my laptop screen.
Yeah.
When I do the presentation, maybe I look at my laptop screen because it's bigger. Just a heads up.
So are you here today with the BYU MPA program
Yes,
to give that
I
presentation?
am.
Okay.
With my teammate.
Awesome. We're so glad you're here. Thanks. Okay, Aaron.
I'm Aaron Scallon. I'm the Director of Operations.
Thanks, Aaron. Chelsea.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm the volunteer coordinator.
Thanks. Okay, Lindsay, I think you're new. Have you been here before?
No, and I'm also with the MPA group. So there's 5 of us. So that might account for the huge influx of participants. But yeah, I'm excited to be here and kind of hear what you guys are doing and present a little bit about our research.
Thanks. Okay, Hiram.
So I'm Hiram, also with the MPA group, and I'm originally from South Africa. So it's good to be with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Ryan.
I'm Ryan. I'm with the MPA group. I'm from Orem and looking forward to talking with you guys tonight.
Cool, thanks. Okay, Stan.
Stan Morris, BikeWalk Provo Stories.
Thank you, Stan. Okay, Gordon. Gordon, this is his first time here.
Thanks. Yes, I'm excited to be here. I've talked with you and several others before, and excited to learn a lot more and stay involved and do what we can. I'm with the city, the new city engineer for Provo, and so anyway, excited to be a part of this.
Yeah, thanks, Gordon. Rob.
Rob Hunter, Provo City Traffic Engineer.
Thanks, Rob. Clark.
Hey, I'm Clark Pixton, Director of Data and Research.
Thanks. Okay, Kira.
Hi, Kira Johnson. I am the Director of Provo Bicycle Collective.
Thanks, Kira. And Jeremy. Is this your first time here, Jeremy?
Yes, my first time. I've been kind of floating around on the Facebook groups and just figured I'd hop in and listen to what's going on.
Awesome. Yeah. If you want to get more involved, you can, on our website, there's a volunteer application. You can fill that out. There's a position for everybody in the organization. We can use any skills that you have, and we'll put them to work. Okay, Rick West.
Rick West, child chauffeur.
Nice. On a cargo bike, right?
On a cargo bike.
Yeah. Okay, Bremen.
Hey everybody, I am the Director of Sustainability at BYU. I'm also on the bicycle committee for the university that Aaron rolled off of recently. So just here to drop in, got Christine's email and thought I'd join you guys tonight.
Cool, thanks for joining. Thanks for your work at BYU, and I love the signs.
Thanks, good to see y'all.
Yeah. Okay, Jared.
Hey guys, sorry I don't have a webcam today. I'm with the city. This is actually my last BikeWalk Provo meeting with the city because I'm taking a new position. So,
where are you going?
Fair and Piers.
Oh, consulting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So.
Is it their Salt Lake City office?
Mm-hmm.
Are you moving, working remotely?
I'll work remotely probably half the week and then commute the other half.
Commute. Yeah. Cool. Well, we will miss you. And if you live in Provo, you can keep volunteering.
Yeah, I'll still be a resident, so I'll probably still pop in.
You can volunteer. Yeah. Hey, McCord.
We're here. Back to color for this one. I'm on the bus, so I'll be muted.
Nice. Coming to us from the bus. I love it. Thanks. And then lastly, Logan.
Hey, I'm Logan. I live in Springville. I'm with the Hobble Creek Bicycle Association, and I like all you guys and just like to kind of keep tabs on what's going on.
Thanks, Logan. We like you too. Okay. So the first thing is announcements, and I'm going to do the announcements. Basically, there's just one thing that I want to tell everybody, because last BikeWalk Provo meeting was it was a big one. It was in person at the startup building, and I just want to say that there's this YouTube video that if you weren't at that meeting, you should watch, because we talked all about the things that we accomplished together in 2021. So if you weren't there, watch this. You can put it on 2x speed and speed through it. But we did so much together in 2021, and you all contributed so much. So that was a great celebration. We had tacos, we had soda, And we also celebrated our partners too. You know, downtown Provo was there presenting, Provo City, like especially the engineering department was there. We had Kira from the Bicycle Collective. So we did a lot in 2021, despite the challenges the world's facing. That's the only announcement that I have. We have an announcement from Chelsea. So Chelsea is our volunteer service coordinator, and she's got a service project planned. You want to tell us about it?
Sure, thanks, Austin. This Saturday at 10 a.m., we're meeting at the corner of State Street and Cougar Boulevard to do a trash cleanup. This is the second annual event of the, Aaron can actually speak better to this than I can, but this is the second annual event happening right around New Year's. Let me just, if I may, share this so that you, if you have your phone, you can take a little picture, but it's Love Your Public Streets event, and please join us if you're around. Should be fun, really mellow. Come on bike, on foot, or on your scooter, whatever you want.
So I don't know if you said this or not, but should we bring trash bags, or are those covered?
I've got trash bags and gloves, so we're good. We're good there.
Okay, cool. Because last time we did this, we picked up so much trash that we were just like scrambling for trash bags.
Got 100 bags.
Wow.
So
Oh.
good, hopefully.
Yeah, let's fill them up.
Yeah. And I did want to say I got to dip out here, but thanks for gathering. And I'm sorry I'm going to miss the presentation, but I'll see you this weekend, hopefully.
No problem. Yeah, see you on Saturday.
All right.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. Okay, so next up, we've got Rob, Hunter, and Gordon and Jared from the city's engineering department. And if you guys have been paying attention to TMAC for the past year and a half almost, they've been talking about Center Street almost every meeting. And the goals that we in Downtown Provo Inc. share and have been advocating for are primarily to slow speeds and to increase pedestrian safety. And as a side goal, create space for biking too. And so the city has, as we've been pushing that, the city turned to its transportation committee and said, come up with some ideas that are implementable. And so they did that. And I think it was either October or November, they finalized their ideas. And now Public Works is sorting through them. And I believe coming up with a list of what's realistic now and what we can plan for in the future. So take it away, Rob.
Well, before I launch in, I'll see if Gordon, do you want to do any introduction before I launch in, or you just want me to launch in?
No, you'll do great, and I'll just interrupt when I need to say something.
All right, sounds good. So as Austin said, if you watch TMAC over the last several months, they've been going through, and we and the planners put together just basically every idea that had been thrown out either recently or in years past about Center Street, and just put it into a spreadsheet. And kind of help them come up with the formulation gave some input, I guess, on the formulation of how to score them, although they really determined it all themselves. And especially on the scoring, it was our TMAC committee. So if you don't know, I guess for those that don't know what the TMAC committee is, it's the Transportation and Mobility Advisory Council. So it's not just, cars, they give feedback on any form of transportation mobility issue. And they are made up of citizens, there's professors, there's a member of the planning commission, there's a representative from the city council that listens in, and every district has a representative. And so it's not engineering staff, members, it is members of the community that are able to give input and recommend things towards the city council. And so what we did is, like I said, we put it together. They asked us questions. We gave them some kind of technical answers in terms of the best we knew how on some of these. Some of these are not, engineering necessarily related. Some of the ideas that were thrown out there, just kind of answered questions, but it was really up to them to figure out how they thought that this was going to turn out. And so they did a few things. There was a vision statement that was put out by the city council that kind of informed what the city is looking, what the city council wants to move Center Street forward looking like and being for the city. And then TMAC took that and kind of formulated that into 4 different categories and did rankings, and then they weighted those rankings. So, pedestrian, it's a pedestrian mall, and so pedestrian safety, making the pedestrian experience better, was the highest ranked, or the highest weighted, I guess, of the 4 different rankings. And they went through and they just did a scoring. And as they presented to the council, if any of you watched that, scoring is what they feel like, I guess, is to inform what they feel like will make the greatest, I guess, most clearly achieve what the council is looking for. But it's not necessarily a start with step 1, start with the highest strength and then move down, because some of these are much more expensive. There's ways to go about it to where we can test one thing and that may lead to another. And so they were clear to inform that, hey, we think these will make the biggest impact in terms of what the city council is looking for, but it's not necessarily a start with number 1 and move down to the bottom. And so at that point, the city council turned it back over to the staff and said, okay, take these, the scoring list that the team had put together, and then come up with a plan. And so as Gordon started and we discussed things, the general idea of what we're looking to do is there's a few things that are there's a couple of things that are more permitting and trying to make things easier to do things in the downtown area. And then there are improvements. So there's some ideas that we have of, we'd like to, fix some of the stuff of being able to shut Center Street, make that for the business community, make it I guess less onerous, took away some of the delay that they have. So we've talked about working with them to all put together traffic plans that, if they want to shut down Center Street, they use this traffic plan. If the downtown, Provo if this is a sanctioned, downtown Provo sanctioned event, and they're using this pre-approved traffic plan, they can shut it down. Things like that. And then what our idea is in general is to take some of these ideas of what to do, and for this year we will do a temporary, and when we say temporary, not temporary 2 weeks like we've done on some of the smaller ones like 1450 East and Slate Canyon Drive, but we're talking about like temporary, like as soon as the snow, risk of snow is done, we'll put it in and we'll leave it, through to the fall, and try a few different things and let people, let's see what kind of impact it has. Let's see, does it make things does it work towards achieving some of these goals on Center Street? Get some feedback, and then use that to determine, okay, here's going to be the things that we do permanent improvements, first. And so and I'll kind of go into a little bit of what our ideas have been, and then just kind of open it up to see what feedback you have. But some of the things that we've talked about doing a test is there are temporary speed tables that we can use to test out race crosswalks. We'll probably test that out at a couple of locations so that we're not buying a bunch of temporary stuff that then just goes to waste. So we'll test that out at a couple of locations. We've talked about working with the downtown neighborhood to come up with a permitting process to make it easier to do temporary parklets, but then also look at doing where we can do permanent seating for some of the restaurants down there, more than what there is right now. I already talked about the events process, making it easier, more automatic to close when it's a downtown Provo, business sanctioned event down there, or city sanctioned event down there, just making it more automatic so we can potentially do those more. We have also talked about trying to take into account what the best way of putting a bicycle facility on there. I know the business community would like to be able to do more things out onto the sidewalk. Obviously, right now, officially, you're not supposed to ride your bike or ride your scooter out on the sidewalk. That's where most people do it because of the high traffic that's on Center Street. And so we'd like, even though it was ranked down here further, I think at 27, we'd like to test out. Now, we ran that initially by downtown Provo. There was some hesitation on whether they feel like this really works. So it's an idea that we have. I think we'd like to test it out, see if we can get it down to one lane of traffic. Test out getting down to one lane of traffic. That would open up, space for additional opportunities that could include, can include a designated mobility lane, we'll call it, that Aaron brought up, mobility lane for things like bikes and scooters, and then gives additional space to where there's not that conflict on the sidewalk. So we'll see how these things move forward, right? We're talking about ideas right now, and we'll present that to TMAC. We've got an upcoming meeting where we'll talk about it again, a plan on January 20th. And then once we get a good idea of finalizing what the plan that we want to bring to council is, then we'll bring that to council and say, here's what we want to do. Even for temporary, it's going to have some cost. So here's the cost associated with that. We need to fund that. But the general idea is to test some things out this year, so that we can determine, okay, what are we actually going to do, final wise starting next year. One of the other things, I guess, before I open it up just for discussion, one of the things that's going to be, I think, particularly important for safety of the scooters and bikes is testing out reverse parking. There's some, so for example, 100 West right now, that the plan is reverse parking. And there's some, that one has a little bit more, I guess there's a little bit more question as to whether how well that's going to be workable, because there are, 2 lanes of traffic. And so people can pull across the lane straight in as much as it is people back in. But here on Center Street, with the median, there's just not that same concern. It just seems like this, if there's a place that reverse angle parking should work, it should be on Center Street, right? Because there's the median, people can't just pull across and park the wrong direction. But we feel like this is it's an important thing to do for safety. I guess whether or not the final determination is to go down to 1 lane, and maybe even more, especially if it stays 2 lanes, it's going to be important to where if then the only thing that we have left is to put the charo markers on either the inside or the outside lane. It really seems like it, safety wise, the thing that's going to have to happen is to turn that parking into back in parking. So those are the ideas that we've talked about so far, that we're kind of preparing to bring to TMAC and then to the city council after. And I guess at this point, just gonna see what your guys' feedback is.
I love all of it. I think especially, we were pushing for the raised crosswalks because we think that's going to do the most good with BikeWalk Provo and downtown Provo's shared goals. Slowing speeds was the biggest thing that we wanted to see, because with that comes enhanced pedestrian safety and more confidence in people taking the lane with their bikes. So we're happy to see that.
So, Richard, just to address your question of what is reverse angle parking that you put in the chat. So it's basically just flipping the angle of the angled parking, so that instead of pulling forwards into it, you actually have to stop in the lane and reverse backwards into it. We could probably share a screen and show an example, but that's been shown to be safer for bikes, because then when you pull out of your parking spot, you're actually driving forward rather than backing out.
It especially coming back out into traffic, you're able to see a whole lot better. You're already headed in the right direction. So, Salt Lake has locations where they've done it and it's worked out well. So,
yeah, and I was just going to mention that we had a meeting with Quinn with the downtown and ran all these ideas by him, and so. Like Rob said, some of the things they never said a hard no, they just know that some of the businesses are going to have concerns about various issues. And so one of the things we're thinking of, if we go with this one lane, is really monitor how the businesses function, how things go. The ultimate idea would be, if we do eliminate one of the travel lanes, we would want to split that width partially with, keeping a bike lane, scooter lane in one direction on each side of the road, and then add some additional width to the sidewalk where the businesses could come out and do different kinds of things. So it wouldn't be like you'd have a full 10-foot bike lane. We don't want to do that. So I just want to have everybody, make sure that they're kind of understanding what we're thinking and how we're envisioning this a little bit. So, but it would get the bikes off of the sidewalk. And like Rob said, the reverse angle, I think you even with having its own bike lane, if people are backing out across a bike lane, it's just much more dangerous than when you're backing in, you pull past the spot, your surrounding, you're backing in, and it's much clearer. It's easier for the bikes and the pedestrian, or for the scooters and everybody, to kind of be aware of what's going on. Than and then pulling forward, you can see what's happening. So it's just, I think it'll give bikers a little more confidence being in that area. So those are some of the things. We do have some funds. We're going to have to see if we have enough to do all the changing that we're planning to do with striping and other kinds of things. And then, but the council was pretty supportive. And one thing they are going to do is an arch. So an arch is going to happen. I don't know what that does for bikes or pedestrians or anything, but we're all excited about the arch, and that is a thing that's going to happen. But again, making it a place, making it visually desirable, all those kinds of things are all valuable. So one of the things that I think would be very helpful is Rob's going to be tasked with doing this design because he's looking for something to do. But if maybe we have our meeting on the 20th, but it might be good just to maybe meet with you, Austin, and a few other folks before we start the design, like we did with the Downtown Alliance, and just make sure you understand all the ins and outs, and we can go over some of the minute details. But in general, these are the things we want to do. So I think for the most part, they'll support bicycle and other types of mobility in the downtown and help it feel more like a walkable mall. So and the council, the city council and the administration are on board to try to go that way. But again, we're all nervous, so we want to do it in these temporary steps, do it long enough so we can do counts on neighboring streets, figure out what's happening, and then come back and put it in permanently.
Awesome. I'm excited to see how you can pull off going down to one lane temporarily and still make it function. Because it seems like you'd have to cut out parking on one side or something, but that's going to be a really creative problem solving exercise.
We have Rob, so
that'll be mine.
Yeah, that's cool. Does anyone else have questions or thoughts? I think this is great.
So I was actually wondering if that was something that was still on the table, was if the cutting down to one lane was going to be one in each throughway, or if it was going to be moved into like one way, like one, sorry, throughway down both directions on one throughway.
We would take and keep, right now there's 2 lanes in each direction. We would make it 1 lane in each direction, and then we'd use that remaining leg, that remaining lane to be a bike or a scooter lane temporarily. That's for the next 5-6 months or whatever that goes down to.
Yeah, so I guess we're thinking right now the outside lane, that's probably the one that I'm thinking I'm going to be able to make work better. But for example, it's keeping this inside lane, westbound, or excuse me, eastbound, this inside lane westbound, and then we'll block off, and that's where I've got to figure out all the temporary, how we're going to do it, of block off the areas that to block off through traffic, but then keep it open. Trying to keep it open to allow parking still. If we block off the parking, it's going to be nobody's going to like the temporary. So
we have to keep the parking. We can
Yep.
lose a little bit, but we have to keep the majority of it. Just
Right.
That's important for the businesses.
Yep.
So that's where the reverse angle can kind of help.
Sorry, I had a question, if that's all right. This is Rick. I'm loving these ideas. So thank you so much. Can you tell me, is the plan for the bike lane on Center Street, whatever you end up doing, will it be like a protected lane with some kind of barrier to separate the cyclists from the drivers?
Most likely not, because at least not for portions. We may be able to put some. We don't have a final design. We may be able to put some protections in some localized places, but most of this is going to. One of the biggest things for the businesses is we've got to keep the parking, and so to be able to push the, for example, the sidewalk or the one gutter out here and push the parking out and then keep a bike lane through here. Really, I mean, when you're talking about putting a gutter and then a bike lane and then another gutter, and then you take back a lot of the space that you just created by taking away one lane. So almost sure likelihood if we go down to one lane is that we be able to push this out some, but then keep the bike lane adjacent to the travel lane. We may be able to have some protections in short stretches, right? But cars are going to have to be able to pull in and out of the parking spaces there, or I guess back into and then pull out.
We'll look at that design,
spaces.
but Rob's right. We have to keep parking, and we have to be able to snow plow the bike lane as easily as we snow plow the vehicle lane. And so there's some synergy. We're going to have to look at it, but right now we're open to a ton of ideas, knowing that we have to keep the parking. That's going to be critical to have the downtown support, and we won't be able to go forward if we don't have their support through this. So, and right now they're willing to let, we presented this to, some of the stuff they're more excited about than the other, but I think if we can show a good plan and make them feel comfortable, we'll be able to do a lot of these things. So that's critical.
So I am generally in favor of bike lanes, but I do think because of the slower speeds that are being pushed with Center Street, that it may be smarter just to put a shared lane with cars and bikes, personally thinking.
Yeah, and we're looking at both. I mean, that's the thing, is that's the test, right? That's the reason why we're going with the test of saying, hey, does going down to one lane and then potentially making that a separated bike lane, does that make sense? Let's test it out. If it doesn't make sense, then that won't be the direction that we go.
For sure.
We'll want your feedback, not just at the end, but through the process. And there'll probably be some opportunity to tweak some things and change some stuff. I'm confident we won't do everything right the first time. So it'll be good to be able to get ideas and do things a little bit on the fly as we see better ways to do something, or if we see something that's just not working, let's change it up. We don't have to do a bad thing for a long time. We can step in and make a few modifications here and there.
For sure.
The Public Works is going to love this. They're going to think, they're going to be so excited. We'll all blame Rob, so it's not a big deal.
So I don't know how much it's been touched on as well, is if there's been any plans of adjusting Freedom Boulevard through the area of Center Street, because that tends to be I think a sticking point as far as pedestrians go as well.
We have not.
Right now, we're just looking at Center Street. At the interface, there may be some stuff, but we're only going to tackle one problem at a time. And right now, Center Street, right at the intersection, we will certainly look at that. But today, this year, this cycle, the council was supportive of us moving forward with some pretty bold ideas. And so I think let's really show how this can work. And then I think this can have momentum in other areas. So that's kind of my advice to you is
Yeah, that makes sense.
let's do a really good job with this one.
Yeah, I was just wondering because it tends to be the point where even if you're going down Center Street, you're having to cross Freedom, and that kind of can cause a bit of a annoyance as far as pedestrians and things like that. But yeah, that makes sense. Put it down the line. That makes sense.
We'll learn things through this process that will help us in the future.
Cool. Thank you so much for that presentation.
It's a minor thing. Oh, I was just going to say, Rob and I have quietly been updating some of the pedestrian walk times across the city. And Freedom Boulevard and Center Street is one of those that we recently upped.
Added some walking time to you.
It's a little thing, but
we didn't advertise it. Yeah, but
it does make it a little bit easier to get across.
Nice job. Yeah, I think when we were going into these, pushing for changes on Center Street, we had no idea that it's going to turn into like, let's reimagine and let's rebuild the whole thing. That's kind of exciting. That's an exciting thing to think about. So we will be with you as partners, helping you figure out a good design that's going to work for everyone. So in transition, I'm just going to put a plug on this street from Barcelona, Spain. I mean, if you're thinking like redesign the whole thing, now it's another thing to think about. This is Las Ramblas in Barcelona. So basically the center is the pedestrian mall and the edges have the vehicle travel. I don't know if we have this kind of wet on Center Street, but there's a lot of ideas around the world to pull from. So let's move on. And we've got some guests here from BYU's MPA program. And I don't know a lot about the study they did. Maybe Aaron, you do. Do you want to introduce them?
I don't know a lot about it, but
it relates to walking though, and so we're into it.
Pedestrian safety. They reached out. They've done their homework, and I shared this with Rob last week, and he was glad to have it. And so we're glad to have them here with us this evening. So Ryan,
take it away, guys.
Take it away. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll present for about 12 to 15 minutes, and then we'll have a little time for questions. And Lindsay's going to start us off.
Awesome. Well, we're excited to be here with you guys. According to the Governor's Highway Safety Association, pedestrian traffic deaths in the United States have actually increased 46% over the last 10 years, which is a pretty staggering statistic, considering the total amount of traffic deaths in general has only increased by 5% during the same period of time. In fact, a pedestrian was killed in a traffic collision every 85 minutes in the year 2019. So pedestrian safety is clearly a concern issue nationwide, but what about Provo? I think the question we had was, is Provo City noticing the same troubling trend among its pedestrians? And unfortunately, to some extent, yes. From 2015 to 2019, accidents involving Provo pedestrians increased by 33%. Although pedestrians were only involved in 2% of Provo's total car accidents, they accounted for 25% of total crash fatalities. Our organization of Master of Public Administration students at Brigham Young University sought to identify the best solutions to alleviate pedestrian traffic concerns in Provo City. Through careful research and analysis, we've identified radar speed signs as the best general solution to improve pedestrian safety within Provo, although rectangular rapid flashing beacons are an appropriate alternative for areas of higher pedestrian traffic or concern. Today we will kind of be talking about Provo City's background, the criteria that we analyzed in regards to making our decision for proven solutions that have been shown to improve pedestrian safety, our recommendation to Provo City, and answer any questions you may have.
Thanks, Lindsay. So as we know, Provo is subject to a couple of unique factors. Firstly, in regard to its demographics, it's actually found to be the youngest city in America with a population averaging of about 25 years of age. And this is especially relevant considering that there are 13 elementary schools alone in Provo. And car accidents are the leading cause of death of children under the age of 14 years of age. We, of course, also have a large student population to contend with, and they make up a large portion of pedestrians. The second factor is unique weather patterns in Provo, and like you mentioned, in winter at the moment with the snow. So out-of-state students from places like California and Arizona who are unaccustomed to walking and driving in snow and ice are especially at risk. Pedestrian safety infrastructure might not totally resolve the issue, but research does indicate that it does help.
In approaching this issue, we wanted to make sure that we consider the need for relevant stakeholders. We include the Provo City Council, the Provo Transportation and Mobility Advisory Committee, and the Provo residents. We also study the length of the Vision 2030 statement to ensure that our recommendation align with the city future plan.
So 4 specific criteria we use to evaluate each of the pedestrian safety alternatives or the safety initiatives that we proposed. And while we did this, we kept in mind 3 aspects of public administration that were suggested by David Rosenblum, who is a well-known scholar of public administration. And these aspects are managerial, political, and legal. So firstly, and they were ranked in the order shown on the slide here, that political feasibility is the most important criteria to consider because we need the support of the public and public officials as well as the citizens' support when selecting alternatives. And then we also just want to keep in mind that cultural beliefs within Provo can often hinder certain initiatives from being installed or used. And obviously, citizens are always concerned about where the tax money is going. And then next we have efficiency, and that was divided into 2 sub-criteria, namely cost efficiency and effectiveness. With cost efficiency, we basically compared each alternative or initiative on a one-to-one basis. However, some of the alternatives may need more than 1 installed at a certain location. So it would depend on the cost wouldn't be necessarily on a one-to-one basis if you look at it from a bigger perspective. But funding would obviously come from city budgets as well as federal grants, CDBG grants from the federal government. And then we also want to just keep in mind that cheaper is not always better, and we try to consider what would be a sustainable alternative. And then with effectiveness, effectiveness was basically measured on how well each alternative did on preventing pedestrian accidents and also slowing down our vehicles. Then next we have representation of community preferences. We want to ensure that the citizens' voices would be heard when considering alternatives, because they know the neighborhoods very well and they know the danger areas. And I think when considering this as well, we need to not just consider the majority of the population or those that speak the loudest, but also minority groups to see how this may affect them. And lastly, accessibility. We want to ensure that we want to see how each alternative would be used by the various demographic groups in Provo and age groups, and make sure that it is easy to understand as well.
So we had 4 alternatives for this project. As number 1 is pedestrian crossing flag. Number 2 is a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. Number 3 is radar speed sign, and number 4, pedestrian hybrid beacon. So for pedestrian crossing flag, basically it is a flag that pedestrians hold while crossing the street so that when the driver see, they stop it. And it is the cheap option compared to other other alternative. With $100, you can buy 2 flag holders and 6 flags. Even though it's cheap, but the study show that it can decrease pedestrian accident by 31%. However, it is the preferred alternative because it requires pedestrian to hold the flags compared to other. Sorry, and it also least accessible because in Salt Lake City, where this option is implemented, the flag was regularly stolen.
So the second alternative we considered were rectangular rapid flashing beacons. And I'm sure these are familiar to this group in particular, but in essence, it's a pedestrian crossing sign with LED lights installed above and or below that can be pushed, and the lights flash while a pedestrian crosses the street. And it helps drivers to be aware that pedestrians are in the area. And this is probably most noticeable in Provo by the rec center, if that's unfamiliar to people, but kind of how it did on the criteria. So it is a politically feasible option, in large part because it's already been installed, and so it's somewhat familiar. It's also, generally speaking, a financially feasible option too. Obviously, price range varies very much so across the nation, as well as labor, materials, installation. But in general, the average cost is about $22,000. It's really effective. So it decreases pedestrian involved accidents by 47%. That study comes primarily, there's a number of studies throughout the country that have been sitting around 47%, but in particular, there was a really well-known study done in Florida that showed that it was a very effective option at preventing pedestrian-involved accidents. It's preferred by pedestrians oftentimes because it is a very safe solution. People feel secure when they use it. It's less preferred by drivers because it interferes with driving patterns. So preferred by some, less preferred by others, but it is a very accessible option. At the push of a button, it's easy to cross. They also can be installed with radar technology so that it can even be sensed with body movement to start the lights. And so overall, it performed kind of as in second place, if you will, among our alternatives, given our criteria and Provo's preferences for criteria, but it really is a sound, effective solution that really helps prevent pedestrian-involved accidents.
Our next alternative we examined was radar speed signs. You're probably familiar with these. They're the signs that measure the nearest oncoming car speed with a radar device and instantaneously display it on an interactive display, usually positioned next to a speed limit sign.
Did we lose Ryan?
Ryan?
Yeah, it looks like he's gone.
Well, I could continue for him. I'll maybe continue until he hops back on. Hiram, if you'll keep an eye, if he hops back on, I'll get off his slide. But so
No
radar speed signs are the most politically feasible option, and it's in large part because they're the most familiar and they've been installed in many places. And so they tend to be really politically feasible. And the average cost is more than obviously the crossing flags, but less than our other alternatives. And it makes it nice that they can be moved throughout the city as well. Oftentimes they can be installed on in areas where they can be moved from location to location. So that provides a little bit of flexibility as well that kind of makes the money go further. It is, however, the least effective alternative. So that doesn't mean they're not helpful, but probably the best way to describe them is they may be the least effective at preventing pedestrian accidents, but they are quite effective at preventing pedestrian deaths. So it's kind of a trade-off. And obviously, like, we laugh and say, well, why would you install something that doesn't prevent the accidents in the first place? But honestly, they performed well in a lot of areas and they still are effective. There's a lot of studies that have shown that as speeds decrease, the amount of of pedestrian injuries and survival rates increase dramatically. And so the more that those speeds can be lowered, the better the likelihood of pedestrians either being just slightly injured if there is a pedestrian incident, or not injured at all if they're going slow enough. It is the most preferred alternative, not surprising, by drivers because it doesn't inhibit driving patterns. Obviously with bicyclists and pedestrians, it doesn't inhibit their movement either, but it also doesn't provide as much of a feeling of safety as they kind of traverse throughout the city. It is the most accessible alternative, largely because it requires people to do nothing. And so by that nature, it allows all people to use it. So radar speed signs, as we mentioned before, scored highest, and we'll go into that a little bit later about the trade-offs between each of these alternatives. But overall, it was the best general solution given Provo's criteria and the way that they weighted the criteria.
Thanks, Lindsay. I think Ryan's also back now, so I think he'll do this next section.
Awesome.
But fourth and finally, we have the pedestrian hybrid beacon, and this is an alternative that can be seen. I think it's just across from the new city building. They have one over there, and it basically operates very similar to a crosswalk at intersections, at traffic lights, where a pedestrian has to push a button, but it differs in the sense that it goes on a lot quicker than having to wait at a traffic light for a crossing man to allow you to walk. So these are found to be very effective. They are found in areas to reduce pedestrian involved accidents by almost 70%. The biggest issue with this is the higher cost compared to the other alternatives that have been mentioned. It averages to a cost of over $57,000 to install. And because of this, it might bring down like the political feasibility and for cities and communities to want to install these. But like I said, they are very effective, and they also have to be strategically placed, because if they are placed in areas of high traffic, especially during peak time, if pedestrians have control over it, it might add more congestion on the roads and increase traffic. And obviously it is preferred by pedestrians because it's easy to use and they feel more secure using it.
So we took the four alternative and run the model and do the analysis. And this is the score that we come up with. So pedestrian crossing flag score 13 out of 100. And rectangular rapid flashing beacon 29. The radar speed sign 39. And last but not least, the pedestrian hybrid beacon 19. And obviously the radar speed sign is the winner here among the four alternatives.
Can you hear my voice this time?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. Thanks. Sorry about my internet issues before. So our recommendation, as was mentioned earlier, is favoring radar speed signs among these pedestrian safety solutions we examined, specifically on thoroughfares in the city with high pedestrian accident risk, like Center Street. And we predict, based on our analysis, that these signs would be a highly politically feasible, representative, and accessible option. And even though they are less effective than other options, they would still be one of our most affordable options. These signs, the effectiveness issue obviously is a big trade-off with these signs. They're the least effective according to the studies that we looked at about all our alternatives. But it's worth reiterating that these signs are not ineffective. Studies show that they promote pedestrian safety by encouraging cars to better obey the speed limit. And one study, for example, showed that they reduce the risk of pedestrian accidents by between 4 and 20%. And so even though there's this trade-off in effectiveness, based on the criteria we used and how Provo City appears to weight these criteria, they are the most preferred option among all our alternatives. So now, with that, we'll have some time for questions, and then we can wrap it up after you guys are done with questions.
So we can take one, maybe two questions.
So I have one question about the preferred alternative. Actually two, but maybe we'll just take one. I feel like one issue is that they're the hardest to place gracefully within the active transit zone. They often get placed in bike lanes or on sidewalks. So I wonder if you've looked at if that factor can cancel out some of the benefits of the speed signs. Also, I'm curious if there's any research about the longevity of the effect, because these signs tend to get placed for a little while. I guess there's been one by BYU campus for a long time on the hill. But I'm wondering if anybody has looked at whether these have a permanent effect or whether they kind of have an effect at slowing speeds and increasing safety for a while until either driver fatigue happens and they forget about it, or the sign gets moved and then the speed increases. Have you seen anything about either of those issues?
Those are good questions. To address your second question first, we did read some studies about the longevity of the signs effect, and they generally show that the effect of the signs diminishes over time, although it still remains better than without the signs. And some of these signs can be installed temporarily on poles and then moved to different poles. They can also be mounted on mobile trailers. And so perhaps by moving the signs around, the city could mitigate some of the declining effectiveness of the signs. As to your first question on whether we looked at the placement of the signs in the road, we didn't honestly really look at that. So I can't speak to that very much, but that is a good point that I think should be considered in implementing these signs.
Awesome, thanks. Great presentation, by the way. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys. We'll have to end questions there. Thank you for taking the time to choose pedestrian safety as a topic. It's very important, just as you saw, deaths are going up in the US. If you're interested in this subject and you want to learn more about it, I would definitely recommend reading the book. It's on my shelf. It's by Angie Schmidt. We had her give a presentation. You guys remember that? Right of Way by Angie Schmidt. So she's done a lot of research on why pedestrian deaths have been increasing over the past 10 years. One of her big things that she blames is the larger size of vehicles. Over time, SUVs have been more predominant. People are purchasing them more than sedans. So that's one of the things, but you should definitely read that book if you're interested in this topic. And to all you MPA students that presented, we'd love to have you help out as volunteers. You can casually subscribe to our newsletter and just watch what we're doing and get involved when you want to, or you can make the commitment to have a volunteer position and lead some projects with us. So definitely start out by subscribing to that newsletter. I think Christine put the sign up in the chat.
You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram too. It's a good way to see what's going on also.
Okay, thank you guys. And then we're going to skip Clark's pedestrian count presentation and do that next month. But in the, we want to give Kira some time every meeting to talk about the Bike Collective and what's going on there. So Kira, if you want to give us a really quick, 2-minute update on what's happening.
Yep, I can definitely give a quick update. It's a new year. We're very excited at the collective for what's coming. One of the biggest things that has changed here in the new year is we have a volunteer management system called GivePulse that we're using. Volunteers are huge for the collective and help us have the impact that we have. And we're investing more in creating a like positive experience for them, registering for times, signing up for different events and tracking their hours. So I'm personally really excited about that because it will reduce the amount of time that I'm spending on like Google Forms and then Eventbrite and then Sign Up Genius and then a different Google form and lots of emails from many people. So I'm excited about that. And so far our volunteers are having positive reviews. So if anybody is wanting to volunteer with the collective, we don't expect you to have any bike mechanic knowledge, even though primarily our volunteers are helping us fix up bikes that we end up giving away to community members. We have training for volunteers and we make sure that you feel comfortable in the new lingo and the new tools and everything else. So that's one of the big things. We are going to start hosting our Women's Transfem night, which is for those populations every single Monday. It was just going monthly. And now every Monday from 5 to 8, the shop is only open to women trans femme folk. And we will work on bikes, whether your own, or if you want to learn how to wrench on some of the bikes that we give away, I'm there to help teach. So there's our big January goals.
Thanks, Carrot. Do you have numbers off the top of your head? It's like 2021, how many bikes you gave away, how many bikes you sold?
Yes, I have at least close numbers. We sold close to 350 bicycles, refurbished bicycles last year, and we gave away almost 200. So in December, we gave away a whole ton, which was great. And if any of you helped, thank you.
That's awesome. I think the customers of the Bike Collective ride their bikes more than anybody else. You see them throughout the city. They've got the Bike Collective sticker on the tube usually. So they do an incredible job getting the bikes to the people. If you are looking for a place to donate money or bicycles or time, Bicycle Collective is the place. Okay. Any last words, you guys? Thanks so much for joining us. Any last announcements? Okay. Hope you have a great month and we'll see you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, Aaron, send me the recording so I can post it on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll do.
Okay.